they've done the job. I haven't had a problem with them. Okay. The tires I have on them are 38 millimeter tires. They're a decent grip tire. You can get into some sand and some trails. I primarily like to stay on the road. I'm not a trail rider. But if I had to get on some dirt or a moderate trail, I could do it fine with these tires. I could do it fine with this bike. That's another reason I like this bike and the suspension on it and the style. I think it's a little bit more suitable if you had to get off-road a little bit while you're touring. It's a little bit more suitable than a road bike with skinny tires or even a touring bike. Okay. I prefer the 700C wheels over the 26-inch wheels. Like I said, I stay mostly on the pavement. The 700Cs will roll a little bit faster. The 38 millimeters are wide. They give you a good grip and good traction if you do get off the road. The tires on here right now have Maxxis Overdrive. They're great tires. They're Kevlar. I'll talk about that later in another video. But anyways, I just like the 38 millimeter tires, or around that size. They're great for comfort. They're not hard on the road. Because they're 38, you have to put a little lower pressure on them. I run about 75, 80. Gives you a comfortable ride. And they're just a good all-around tire. Okay, great in the rain. These Maxxis Overdrives are great in the rain. Excuse me. Another thing about a comfort hybrid bike that makes it a good touring bike is it has a lot of attachment points. As you can see, I got both my water bottles on there, so you have two different sets of attachment points for your water bottle cages. Okay, that's great. I have attachment points for the rear rack, two on the lower section here. Attachment points to mount my rear rack and the fender. You can see the fender stays, or where they're mounted there. Okay, so plenty of attachment points and mounts, so you can put your accessories and your gear on there. Another good reason that a comfort or hybrid bike, especially this bike, makes a good touring bike is because it has a long chainstay. The chainstay is that piece right there that goes between the cassette and the crank. Okay, that spans where your chain goes. On this bike, it's almost 18 inches. On a lot of road bikes, that's going to be well less than 17, sometimes close to the 16. And what happens there is when you're turning your pedals, you're cranking your pedals, and you got your panniers on the back, if you don't have a long chainstay, if that's not a longer distance, and you got big feet like me, 11 and a halves or 12s, the back of your heel is going to hit your rear pannier, or it may, okay? So typically these comfort hybrid type bikes will have a longer chainstay, which is great for bicycle touring because you can get your gear on there. Also, the gearing on comfort bikes are usually suitable to touring. The cassette on the back there, that's an 1132. It means the small sprocket has 11 teeth on it and the large sprocket has 32. The original one was an 1130. I wore it out. I wore the original chain out, and I had the bike shop put a new sprocket on there, and they put an 1132 on there. That 32 gives me more hill climbing capability. The bigger that big sprocket is on the back, the easier it is going to be to pedal, and the easier it is to carry a load and to get up a hill. And the front crank, there's 3 sprockets on the front crank. This one has a 28 tooth, 36 tooth, and a 48. That's very suitable to carrying a load. The 28 gear tooth would be what you're going to use to go uphill and carry a heavy load. On road type bikes, racing type bikes, you're going to find the crank gears in the front to be a lot bigger. Sometimes the big ones are well into the 50s, 50 teeth per sprocket, and you're going to find the rear cassette, the sprockets are a lot smaller geared. Maybe the largest gear goes up to 28 or 26, and that's because they're trying to get more speed out of it. Okay, but most of your comfort bikes are going to have this kind of gearing, which is great for touring. And this is the same for mountain bikes. Usually a mountain bike will have this kind of gearing, because a mountain bike, you're usually, you're off-road, you need more pedal power, you need to go up hills, so they'll have that type of gearing. Let me show you what I do with the front rack. And a lot of people avoid a suspension fork on the front for touring, and if you look on the internet and start doing your research, you'll find a lot of people say, oh, don't get a suspension fork on the front for touring. You can't put a rack on it. Well, you can put a rack on it. Now, I'm a tinker. I love to tinker. So, I'm capable of doing things like that. If you're not, maybe have a friend who can do something like that for you, or go to your bike shop and have them come up with ideas. But I'm a tinker, and I can do a lot of things myself. I like doing that. I enjoy doing that. I want to spend as little as possible. Again, you're probably picking up on that. I don't want to spend a lot of money on this stuff. What people spend on their bicycle components and their parts, it astounds me. The thousands and thousands of dollars that people will spend on their bicycle and their equipment and their gear just amazes me. I spend very little. And I'll talk about that in another video. I'll go over some of my specific gear, but for now I just want to cover the type of bike that I have, and why this inexpensive bike makes a good touring bike. A good touring bike for me. Your taste may be different, but it makes a good touring bike for me. And it's great for beginners. This kind of a bike is great for beginners. It's because it's comfortable, it's easy to ride, it doesn't cost a lot of money, and it's just a great way to get into cycling. And then as you progress and you go along, you'll probably get another type of bike, or this kind of bike, more of a specialized type bike than this one. But this is a great bike for beginners, someone who's just getting into cycling, okay? But the front rack, this is what I did. My front suspension fork is made out of aluminum and magnesium. I don't know how much is what, or what part is aluminum or what part is magnesium, but anyways, what I did is I mounted this is a rear rack. It's the same exact rack as my rear rack. I just turned it around and mounted it as a front rack. I had no place to mount it at the bottom of the fork for the rack stays. What I had to do is drill a hole right through the fork, and as you can see, my fork is wide enough down there, so I just took my drill, eyeballed it, and popped a hole in each side. I got lucky. It came out perfect. Had no problems at all. It's perfectly uniform. I wouldn't recommend you do that. It's probably better to have a professional do it and use a jig, or so on and so forth. But again, I'm a tinker. I like to do these things. It worked for me. I popped a hole in each side, so there's where I mounted my fender stay and my rack stay for the front rack. And then up top, the trick is here, since it's a suspended fork, you have to mount everything on the bottom part of your suspended fork. If you mount it on the top part, the suspension moves, it's not going to work. So what I did is I mounted the top part of my rack to the fork cross member, which is a part of the bottom of the fork, okay? I just took a regular cable clamp. My cross member has a hole in it where I mounted my fender also, and I just took a cable clamp from the hardware store or Lowe's or Home Depot, whatever, and put it on my rack and clamped it and bolted it to that fork cross member, and it worked great. It's as solid as a rock. I did have to modify this rack a bit also. You can see the shiny part there. That's where I had to cut away part of the rack so it wouldn't hit the cross member and it wouldn't hit my brakes. But that was easy enough to do. And it works great. That rack is as solid as a rock. I like to ride with two racks, have panniers both in the front and the back. I don't like trailers. I tried running a trailer, pulled my granddaughter around it, and I just didn't like the feel of it. I'd rather have everything on my bike, okay? So you can get racks on a suspended fork quite easily, no problem, okay? So again, this bike works great for me. A bike of this type may work great for you, or it may not. To each his own, okay? I just wanted to show you how you can get into even bicycle touring, which is generally known to be an expensive activity when you're buying all the gear. I've kind of done it in a very inexpensive way that works for me, and I think it can work for anybody. So, hopefully these tips have helped you out a little bit. And I will do another video here soon, and I'll start going over more specifically the components of my bike, how I use them, and my gear, and we'll talk about where I got them and how much I paid for it. Gotta warn you, I didn't pay a lot. This isn't a sexy rig. It's not a lot to brag about, but it definitely is functional, it works, and it's inexpensive. So if you want to get into touring, something like this may work for you. Okay? This Cyclist 1222 out.